welcome everybody. Welcome to Chris's Chat and Babble. Today I've got a very interesting guest. Alexandra Gillies was one of the very first people that I managed to recruit in when we were SPL, right back in the very early days. Alexandra made some significant impact into us as an organisation, both from the day I first interviewed her, a little bit of a story to say on that one, and then through to when she worked for us as a lead architect and did some stunning work with the Green Bean. So yeah, welcome Alexandra.
Thank you very much for that great introduction. I'm delighted to be here.
Well,
I'm nervous about the questions.
Well, no, that was the hardest one. You don't need to be. You don't need to be. So no, look, I appreciate you joining us. You're out in South Africa at this moment in time. Stunning weather outside. We've got pouring rain here. Stunning country. Do you think that out of all the places you've travelled to, is South Africa your home?
Well, I'm a dual citizen, so it is very much my home, and the UK. But I think I tend to spend most of my time here these years. My trips over here just get longer and longer and longer. And one of the days I know I won't be able to get on the airplane back. But it's a lovely country. The culture here is nice, very relaxed, and the weather, of course, is just every day is just gorgeous.
Yeah. So when I first met you, you were living out in Germany, weren't you? If I remember.
I was. Yeah.
So the story of Alexandra, we had a quick chat about this beforehand. I think it was one of my best pieces of recruitment in terms of the structure and how quickly we put everything together. And yeah, you were in Germany. We had a phone call. We had another phone call. We got you on a plane. We flew you out and made you a job offer very quickly. I think it was 2 weeks. You were saying.
Yeah, I think from start to finish to almost contract, it was 2 weeks. Yeah, so I was delighted, and it just felt right.
It was fun as well when we were a smaller organisation because we were able to be that little bit more nimble, and I think that was something that changed obviously when we became Oracle. But look, you came in, and I think what was very interesting about when you joined is that we were trying to bring on this new level of architects. You were coming in as that one, so you took part in quite some extensive training where you traveled around and saw lots of different projects. Was that something that you'd ever done before, or was that the first time you'd had that type of experience?
Well, if you remember, one of the things we were looking at and I suppose we were piloting it to a certain extent with me, was when we're bringing new architects or new recruits on board, new designers, new developers, whatever, then there would be this sort of boot camp, if you remember. And the best way, I'd come from a telecommunications background, customer care and billing on the telecommunications side. And although there isn't that much difference, the client was often a bit different. And you had a number of projects in the States. And that was where we decided, right, we do the boot camp, and we co-created it really, which was a lovely thing to do. And we worked out, there were 3 or 4 places where I went to go and see the projects, go and see the staff, go and just get the feel for it. And yes, that's what we did. We called it the boot camp now. So I was one of the first. We piloted it really, and I don't know whether you ran it sort of anymore. You know, whether it was sort of.
I was involved with it. I can't remember. There was Dave Elkus, I think, did quite a bit of that stuff, and some of the guys in the US. But I mean, we were in the situation where we needed to create architects with experience very quickly, and we couldn't do it through the normal organic. Had you ever experienced anything else like that elsewhere, or was this the first?
No, not with such sort of investment in the employee. It was a real differentiator really, that SPL at the time really invested in its staff and cared about its staff. And you thought, right, and you were also, Chris, yourself, you were very pragmatic and said, right, the quickest way we're going to do this is just send these guys, to 2 or 3 sites. And then, yes, we had some time with David Elkus, who went through the basics of the CC&B system, and you come up to speed very quickly. And what you can't get by talking to projects on the ground or through being trained, then you could do yourself, there was fantastic help notes on the CC&B system. And so, yes, And if you're of a mind to just get stuck in yourself and roll up your sleeves, it was a really great opportunity. Yeah.
Do you think you would have been, I've no doubt that you would have achieved what you achieved because, you know, you're very driven, as you said. I remember stories about people coming round or waiting for you and finding you sitting on a doorstep with a CC&B manual, reading it while you're waiting for a bus and things like that. I wouldn't say that everyone had quite the same level of commitment, but, you know, it was superb. But how much longer do you think it would have taken you, you know, because that was a huge investment and we got you going very quickly. Do you think you would have ever been as good as you were without that training?
I think it was about a month I was traveling, something like that. It was 3 or 4 weeks to about 4 different sites. And no, I don't. And it's also the key as well is establishing relationships. So I created, so not only you learning yourself, you're creating networks and relationships that you draw on throughout your time, you know, in the consulting area around CC&B. So that was probably even more important to the actual learning, the relationships that you developed, which, you know, I retained until the day I eventually left. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a bit like Hotel California. Do you ever quite leave? You know, you might check out, but you don't always leave, do you? So, but
Well, no, you often go on to, as I did, you go on to different projects. You know, I sort of went through SPL and then through the Oracle route, and then I became independent. And you keep bumping up against people who are, you know, it's a small world, as they say. And you know, when you're in utilities, you know, CC&B, and you're going around the world, you always bump into people you know, and that happened over and over again, whatever project I worked on.
Yeah, as you said, it's those contacts. I mean, I've still got the same ones, you know, to this day as you do as well, and I find it amazing. I remember actually being in, I was in Cape Town, and bizarrely, I was there for Jeremy Kwan's wedding actually, and I ended up in Cape Town at the same time that a whole load of guys from Oracle were across for a convention, and I bumped into Andy Turner in a restaurant, and he just went, "Oh, hi, Chris," and it was like I was, you know, I was meeting him for a coffee in the office. No blink of "what are you doing here in South Africa" or anything like that. It was just so, you know, such a lovely thing. But it's those type of contacts that made life kind of fairly interesting. So yeah, they were. But then look, one of the other things that we went on to was this whole green bean idea, and I know, I mean, I was very enthusiastic about that, and the first tranche did, and you played a massive part in that. I think actually, you know, without you, it wouldn't have been the success that it was. Can you tell us a bit about that and the sort of process there?
Sure, no, I can. And I've sort of mentored on and off probably most of my professional career, and I still do a lot of work with the Dublin University Global Leadership Program on their mentoring program, which is amazing. So I've always had a bit of an interest in it, and I suppose a bit of an aptitude for it. And I think it links in with the boot camp that you opened with, Chris. Really, the boot camp was great, but it was an expensive program to run, sort of flying people from program to program. And then it was in Dublin that we started the green. We decided, I think, with discussions with yourself, and I was leading the program at Bordgash in Dublin, and we decided that we really needed more people on board. We were sort of a bit thin on the ground, although we had enough consultants. There was no resilience, there was no contingency in case someone fell ill or something happened, and we quite rapidly needed to ramp up some very keen, what we call green beans at the time. And with yourself, we recruited a number of people who had potential, but just not enough experience. And it was lovely. We involved, again, it was a co-creating situation because you were involved, I was heavily involved as leading the program. And and with the clients as well, we said, look, this is what we're doing. We're going to bring in 4 or 5 new people. There will be a very small charge for them, sort of, you know, so we can just try and cover costs on our side, but they will be learning. But in the longer term, it's to your advantage. And that was how we sold it, really. And I think the idea was for 6 months, they would be on a very low rate, but they would then have 5 very bright young consultants. And it's something that in the consulting industry, which I've been in for a very long time, or was in for a very long time, they introduce entry-level consultants at a very high rate, which often causes issues with relationships. And I think because it's, clients are usually very bright people, they're people like us, really, who are taking consultants on, and you can't pull the wool over their eyes and sell someone as an experienced consultant when they know at a high rate, when they know they're not. And it just breeds a little bit of ill feeling, I think. And this Green Bean program was perfect because we said we had 5 or 6 new consultants we wanted to bring in, but they would ramp up very quickly because of their attitude, their ability. And in the long term, it means this project, this program, your industry, your enterprise has a lot of resilience then, because a lot of people will learn about this program. And they were very keen, and it worked very well. And we rotated them in a number of different areas, number of different departments, number of different areas of the program. And so they were, I suppose it was an apprenticeship really, but we called it the Green Bean program, which was great. And yes, they rolled on, and they went on to become very good consultants for the company and also for the client. And I think it was just a win-win-win all round. And eventually they rolled up to a full rate once they sort of got there, once they graduated from the Green Bean program.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're still involved in it to this day.
Yes.
Some of the guys, both, some still at Oracle and some now external, etc. But yeah, it's been pretty good. Do you think that that's you mentioned trying to sell it onto the client? Did it get easier to sort of suggest the idea of doing it again after the first lot? Is it something that you think if a company does consistently year on year and year, they would have a great return? Or is it just something that you can only do once every 5 or years or something?
I tried to take the idea. I think with the clients, it was sort of a one-off, because that was a massive implementation, putting in the CC&B system, and it was sort of not going to be repeated, not at that scale, other than increments and upgrades and things like that. But I did try to work it with one of the client's longer term suppliers, Dublin based suppliers, who they did bring in sort of contract support from. And I tried to start the Green Bean program with them, but we just couldn't get enough traction with the supplier, which I thought was a pity, because I thought it would have been a lovely program for them. And anyway, I moved on eventually, but so it's sort of it was never. But
it's surprising, because I think that was something that we did. I'm certainly very, very proud of the part that I played in it. Although I was perhaps there at the beginning and helped out a little bit throughout. But if you want, the majority of the work came from the people. As we said, I think we're quite fortunate at the time, because we had a number of big projects that we could have that critical mass in and that experience, and it was probably at the right time in a project to do it. I would say that perhaps there are less opportunities than that today, but there's still opportunities there. It's just how we approach them and how we look at them. But yeah, it was. I kind of wish that we'd kept it going year after year, because one thing I'm seeing now, and perhaps it's just the people that I'm talking about. We talk about the consultants, the people we've met, and the contacts we've had. What I'm noticing is that as I'm getting older, so is everyone else, and actually lots of people are getting to the end of their career now. And I'm thinking, how do we transfer that knowledge down through? And it just seems a shame when some of these people leave the business if there isn't that sort of the ability to pass it down. And I know they do, but in some ways have the youngsters coming up through, no, not the youngsters, the inexperienced people, I should say, coming up through and learning that sort of war story and remembering that one, because it's great if you can have that little bit of history there to go, yeah, this is what we shouldn't do, or this is what we did do. And
I think, no, you're absolutely right, Chris. That's, it's that sort of tacit knowledge that is very, you can't codify it, you can't write it down in a book, you'll never capture those stories. And I think that's part of the reason why you're doing these short videos. You can't write it down. It is life's experiences. And it also created a very comfortable place for the Green Beans
Yeah, so to welcome back, Alexander. We had a little bit of a minor interruption there. We one of the things I've spoken about is load shedding in South Africa, and there's a very good example of what it means to everyone, doesn't it?
I know, just suddenly the grid goes down, the whole infrastructure goes down, you lose everything goes off. Yeah, it's not just turning off a switch, it's the whole grid goes down. So
I was commenting
anyway,
on, I wonder whether that will help South Africa move forward, though, because what they're forcing to do is everyone's forced then to go solar, wind, batteries, etc., etc. So actually it's helping the country move forward in some good ways.
Unintended consequences, because a lot of people now have just done the shift to solar, and it's brilliant, actually. So it's pushing solar technology on as well, and it gives people independence from the grid, which just continues to fail and is showing no sign of resolving that issue in the country. It's such a major issue, but it's a good thing.
But Eskom must also be struggling, though, because then they're having a drop in revenue because you're not buying as much electricity. So, question here, I know we're going completely in a different direction, but do you think this is going to help the cause or actually hinder it? I mean, in one side, it helps because everyone's doing it, but then from a national supplier, it must hinder them because their revenues are dropping. I assume they are, anyway.
Well, yes, they find all sorts of other ways to claw it back. So, lots of sort of stealth taxes and things, and taxing on inverters and taxing on panels and sort of things. So, yeah, but
okay.
I think the Eskom as a national body, it's a bit like the railways here. It's on a demise trajectory, I think, and it will be replaced by a lot of greener solutions, which in the longer term is a really good thing. Yeah,
good thing to be. So. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
So from greener solutions, we're talking about green beans and giving them a sort of safe environment. I was going to ask you about how you can learn about jumping off a balcony, because I don't think that's in the book, is it? As part of a safe option. There's a little bit of an in joke there.
I look back at that and I just how anyone did, and I just think myself, this is on my watch, and how not only myself but a lot of the team jumped off a balcony onto a sofa. It was rather late. We'd had a little bit of wine and it seemed like fun at the time, and thank goodness no one was hurt. Yeah. It was a long drop. It was probably at least 5 meters actually down. It was a long way up.
But everyone lived to tell the tale, and what a good tale it makes, doesn't it? So there we are. I think nowadays there might be a slightly different outcome to that, but we had some interesting. We had something similar to that when we did a management meeting in Paris with sort of buggies that were allowed to drive on the road, and someone managed to basically almost turn one over and break it. You just look and you think, goodness me. But you know what? We all survived. So so on the green bean side, as I said, we had some big projects to get people in, giving them that type of environment. Do you think that this is something that all big companies should try and implement? I know that might be a little bit grandiose, but we saw the benefits of it as a small company and as part of Oracle. But my concern is with companies when all they're concerned about
Sorry, Chris, have I lost you again?
I'm still here. I'm here. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here now. Sorry.
Okay. That's right.
My laptop is just kicking in, so I'm just gonna actually just sorry about this. All the wonderful things with electricity coming and going, and I'm gonna it also affects the routers, of course, every time when the power goes down. But
of course.
We've got the root. Yeah, it's not just the devices themselves, but I've got the router plugged into an inverter, so that should be. And it's so. Yes, apologies to yourself and anyone watching. Although I was at an amazing. It was a virtual conference in London. The United Nations Global Compact. And they do. United Nations Global is a big. Again, we're diverting, but it's quite interesting how these things happen even to the biggest companies. And United Nations Global Compact is a big company. It's a sort of subsidiary of the United Nations, and they run something called ESG reporting, which you've probably heard of, environment, social and governance reporting, where all big corporates of a certain size must fill in these reports just to show how green they are or how they're trying to comply with carbon emissions on the supply chain. And so it's a really big sort of organization. But at this conference, the Lord Mayor was there, and there were, some politicians there, and it was quite a big thing and quite a big audience, some fantastic speakers talking about the changing face of companies really becoming more sustainable and becoming greener. And about halfway through the session on the first day, they were using a separate software to collect questions. So rather than the audience sticking up the hand, all the questions came through on a laptop. Yep. And about halfway through they said, "Oh, the laptop battery's died." so all this virtual audience busy submitting questions on this software and then to this laptop on the stage where they were guessing all these questions. And they said, "Oh, the iPad battery's died."
Goodness me. No, it is. It's funny how reliant we've become on technology. I remember, years ago when I got on a plane to fly somewhere, it was great because I could do work on spreadsheets, etc., and you had this green period of time. Now you go to do work on a spreadsheet, and the first thing you think is, I've got to be connected to the internet. Which, if you're, unless you're in business class or first class, which doesn't happen to us mere mortals, or not very often, at any rate, makes it a bit more difficult. But actually means that without the internet, and this must be one of the things that you struggle with. When you lose the internet now, actually, a lot of your life stops because you can't deal with it. It's incredible how quickly we've become used to that over 15 or 20 years.
Because I work in Africa quite a lot now, because I've moved away from consulting, as you know, and I work a lot in Southern Africa. Any software I have, it has to be able to work offline as well as online. So it's one of my criteria whenever I use particular apps to say it has to work in both, because I am often offline in a place in Africa where there is no Wi-Fi. So yes, it's these are adjustments we have to make, aren't they? But yes, everything seems to be in the cloud these days, all apps.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's obviously, from my point of view, being a small business, what I found is that actually having the cloud has been fantastic, because I can go off and buy these products, and I can buy them in the cloud, and I don't have to invest an awful lot of money at the get-go. Yes, I know how the economies work, but actually I find it very, very refreshing, particularly with some of the tech, like Office. I've always got the most up-to-date version of Office, and it costs me £30 a user per month. Well, it used to cost me £300 to have a version, and by the time I paid that off, it was about 4 versions old, and it just, I think it's phenomenal now. It's
and
just
stuff
how that gets
just upgrading. It was funny how that all came full circle. Do you remember we started off with thin clients, and then we went thick clients?
Yep.
And cloud is really thin client again.
It is. But I think this whole thing, I always found that when I first got into recruitment, everyone was talking about FM. You had FM everything. And then it was all about insourcing. And then a bit later it was about outsourcing. And you're dead right. It was all about mainframes. And then it was PCs, and then it was thin client, and now it's the cloud. And it's in some ways nothing's changed, but just the terminology and other bits. But exactly. that's the way it goes around. We've been talking quite a bit with my old managing director retired. He keeps saying he's retired, but he hasn't retired. But we were talking about when we first did recruitment with filing cabinets and fax machines, and we actually said we thought we're probably more efficient with less technology. It meant we had bigger support staff, but it's kind of quite funny in terms of the outreach we did. Outreach wasn't a word; it was just you picked up the phone and you spoke to people. And I think it used to be easier. I think maybe rose tinted spectacles. I might need to clean them. So there we are. On just a couple of things there. The green bean side. I want to talk about Alexandra's Africa as well, but on the green bean side, do you think that perhaps part of the problem with that is that takes a long-term investment? And what I've seen a lot of, particularly with American companies, is that this quarter is the most important quarter, and therefore there's a reluctance to sort of spend some of that money when you're trying to chase the bottom line all the time. Do you think that's a part of the problem?
I think it probably is, but it's, apprenticeship, which is what it is if you call it in a different name. I've always believed in that, bringing people up sort of, with their bum on the seat, and it works very well. I think it's perhaps also a case of long-termism versus short-termism, and there's also, people move, people are far more mobile these days, and it is an investment in people, first and foremost, and by the client and by the company. So Oracle, was paying salaries for these green beans, whilst they were not earning at a high end sort of, they couldn't be charged out at a good rate. We charged out at a very reasonable rate because that was just the win-win for the client. So, sorry, I've got my dogs just here on the floor. So if you can hear a little bit of barking, they've just seen a cat go past or something. So they're all excited.
Excellent.
So if there's any barking in the background, I'm sorry.
That's no. Don't worry about that. So look, we're talking there. We mentioned you investing in people, whether it be the green bean or something else. But you're talking about doing the mentoring and things like that. How did you get into that one?
Well, I'm heavily involved in the Dublin Business School, University College Dublin, UCD, Michael Smurfit Business School. And I actually did a master's with them whilst I was on the project. Well, I hadn't actually. I'd moved from being consulting to working directly with the client. Actually, I broke a few rules there, but never mind. We won't talk too much about that. And when I was with the client, then I decided I took on a sort of full-time employment with the client and stayed in Dublin. So I was in Dublin for sort of 3 years post the program, working directly with the client. And I did my master's at University College Dublin Business School, and which was amazing. Absolutely amazing experience, and it was in technology management, and I absolutely loved every minute of it. And when I left, you're offered, just about a few years after I left, actually, I was contacted by Michael Smurfit to say, was I interested in being part of a sort of a trial team to see if we can get this mentoring going. So they had they identified about 20 people. We were asked whether we wanted to apply, and I said yes, very interested, and I did. I was accepted. So I was sort of part of the 20 cohort of about 20 people who they piloted this with, and it was for postgraduate students, mentoring postgrads coming into the business school, and they matched us up with a student, and I've been doing that now for nearly 4 years, and each year we get a new graduate. And the scheme has been so successful, and they now have well over probably about 120 mentors. And so that's each year 120 students go through this global leadership program. So the mentoring is part of it, and then they do other bits. So as a postgrad students, you can sign up for this global leadership program, and they help you with your CV. So not only are they training you in a sort of postgrad discipline, they also then take a little bit more interest in your career, and the mentor helps with that as well. And I've loved that, and I find it so inspiring to work with these youngsters, and they're so bright and so keen and so excited about life, and so it gets you all excited as well. So that's, yes, I've continued mentoring, not with any green bean program, despite my best efforts to encourage others to do that. But yes, I do mentoring in different ways through universities now. And I'm actually, as you know, I'm doing a PhD now with Winchester University, and I'm trying to get them to start a mentoring program because I just think it's so valuable.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this is our whole chat so far has been about this whole, coming in, how do you get that experience, and the, the boot camp, the green beans, etc. So yeah, I can think of few people more ideally suited than yourself for that one. So and it's interesting actually, because I saw that I was up at my son's graduation, and they were saying, look, keep in contact with us because we're keen and
Yeah.
we're always here to help you. And it made me stop and think, actually, most people, most universities are happy to do that, but not all of them actually do deliver that. They talk about it, and it's how do you deliver that with a human face? It's very difficult to go up to a lecturer and go, hello, Mr. Lecturer, you've been telling me how I've done anything wrongly. So that must be great to be sort of an independent third party who can listen and not judge, if you want.
Yes, it works beautifully. A bit like the green bean program was a win-win-win for everyone. So this mentoring, because it's removed from the lecturers, a complete third party. You bring experience that the lecturing staff can't do. You bring knowledge of the university, having all the mentors have gone through University College Dublin Business School, and then they can have a little moan, and they can about the university and on the course, and this isn't going well, and you just listen and you try and understand what the this postgrad student is struggling with, or where they need help. And also we can then contact, as a mentor, we can contact the university and say, look, this seems to be happening, and it's probably something that needs to be fixed. So it works. It really works well, the program. And as I say, I love it. So I'm looking forward to taking my new one this year.
If I look back to when I did the resource management role, the resource director role, I kind of guess in some ways that was my job, not only understanding what people are, but then being that ear to listen to and hear about the problems, and then actually go back and say, a tiny tweak here can make a big difference there. And I hadn't really thought about actually that was something I did. It was just something I did and never thought, just never tried to apply that thinking.
No, absolutely. You were the broker. And we could, and you were always sort of in touch with us, and I'm sure my ex-colleagues would agree. You were always very easy to talk to and helpful, and you felt that something would come of it. It wasn't just having a moan. You're trying to be pragmatic, you're trying to be constructive, to say, look, these are the issues and I need help and I don't know who to speak to. And you would sometimes oil the wheels or direct it to someone who could help. And I guess this is, as I said earlier, this is what you're doing here. You're keeping the network alive. The old Oracle network and the SPL network, and because unintended consequences, you never know. It's complex. Social networks are complex. That's what I'm doing my PhD on. But social networks are complex, and you never know. It's complexity management. It's not linear. You never know where things are going to end up and what might emerge as a consequence of talking to somebody, and when.
Yeah, but I think it's all that preparing for the future, isn't it? I'm not going to talk about motor racing because I seem to always bring it back to that one. But when I managed to build a garage for myself, one of the things I did was I planned to make it big enough so that if I did go motor racing, it would accommodate a race car. And I had no idea how I'd ever get there. But then when the opportunity presented itself, I then had the preparation in place to be able to say, yes, I can do that one. And it sounds a really daft thing, I built the ceiling, 2.4 meters high rather than 2.2 meters high, which meant you could do this. And it's just, and I often sit back and think, gosh, it's funny that, because I didn't do that. In some ways, it wasn't a conscious thought. It was just, if I do that, then we've got this ability to do this. And yet I had no idea how that was going to be. But I guess that's kind of what a lot of it is, really, isn't it? As you said, looking ahead. And I don't think I've ever planned. I think that was always one of my big problems actually at Oracle, was that, I remember Brad saying to me, Chris, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, I can't help you get there if you don't know where you want to go. But I just enjoyed the people side of it. And look, it hasn't done me too badly. But I do think that, maybe that mentor idea and helping people, give them some direction or maybe some ideas of the steps to take in each direction is actually hugely critical. So so look, you've got onto Alexandra's Africa now. Bit of a change from being a CC&B person, from telcos. You obviously went into, what does telco say? Telco thinks utilities is easy and utilities think telco's easy. Whole different copy of conversation there. But then from there, CC&B, and then now doing this. Would you say that this is your passion?
Yeah, this really emerged. I think I I've traveled and worked for many, many years, as you know. I've sort of been mobile most of my life and work focused most of my life, or certainly from my late 20s, early 30s. When I left Namibia, I grew up in South Africa and Southern Africa, really, South Africa, Botswana, Namibia. And I first got involved I was conservation researcher. Marine biology was my background. And then I took a complete turn and got involved in, which I took to like a duck to water, programming. And computers were just emerging onto the sort of world stage at the time. It would have been the late 80s, early 90s. And I became a COBOL programmer and just absolutely loved the methodology of it, the linear and the causal way of thinking, and that very structured way of thinking of building programs. And that took me through then 22 years of consulting and being on the road, going from country to country and working and sort of building up my skills, from sort of quite basic programming, understanding testing, training, solution design, big program management, and so I went from the bottom to quite a senior level, with Oracle and beyond. And yes, I think I woke up one day, I talk about it as my Forrest Gump moment. And I was always a big marathon runner. I think you remember that. And so I've run lots and lots of marathons and probably hundreds of half marathons in my life. Running was my panacea wherever I was in the world. And I remember in Ireland waking up one morning and I just thought, I'm tired. I want to go home now. And I would say that was my forest. It was just, I just woke up and I just thought, I want to stop traveling. I'd been traveling for 22 years since I left Southern Africa. And then it was that complete Forrest Gump moment. If you remember that clip where he's in Idaho or wherever, the mountains in the background, and he's got this long beard and he's been running for years. And he says, I want to go home now. It was that. But then I thought, where is home? And the interesting thing, because I traveled so much, I was, as you know, British citizen, South African citizen, but I'd spent most of my time in the Northern Hemisphere. So my natural sort of place was sort of UK. And so yes, that caused a move out of sort of the lifestyle that I knew at the time. But interestingly, over those 22 years, although I was traveling mostly in the Northern Hemisphere, but I'd worked in 11 different countries, a lot of them in Eastern Europe, and I always travel back to South Africa. So every year, every second year, I was going back, and I just absolutely loved it. But one thing I noticed, even post-apartheid, I thought in the area that I used to go to, which is from Johannesburg north to an area called Limpopo, I thought the people here are just getting poorer. You know, there isn't any improvement here. And this was quite a long time after 94. So this would have been almost 20 years post, or sort of not 20 years, but yeah, so probably 20 years post-apartheid. Yeah. I thought, these guys are suffering, you know, there's something going wrong here. And then I loved the area so much, a lot of game reserves, a lot of cultural interest. And I just thought, how can I help? What can I do? You know, with my knowledge of Southern Africa, with my worldly skills that I then had under my belt, I thought, how on earth can I help? You know, what can I do? And I think I was at that stage in my life where I thought, I want to make a difference. You know, I want to jump off the treadmill, this whole sort of consulting IT treadmill. So it was sort of, the time was good. And then I thought, well, I don't know. But I thought, well, often when I came out to South Africa from wherever I was stationed in the world, people would say, can we come with you? You know, take us with you. So quite often when I came out here to South Africa, I would bring people with me, and just as sort of like pals. And I asked a question. I used to always ask them the same question. What did you think? I said, oh, I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And then I'd say, well, but they said, we would never have gone ourselves if you hadn't been with us. It's just too far, too difficult, too many unknowns, too scary, too much risk, all that sort of thing. So I just thought maybe there's something in this. And that was really, out of that started to emerge after I had my Forrest Gump moments. And I thought, well, what am I going to do next? But then my challenge was, I thought, well, if I'm going to start a company, I need some capital to start the company with. So what I did in parallel to starting the company, so this Alexandra's Africa sort of emerged from that, and it had a sustainability mandate to it, although the word sustainable tourism hadn't been invented yet. That only came much later, sort of in 2015. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals were published and the whole sustainable tourism gig got going. So this was pre that. But I knew I wanted to do something that was around this whole sustainability thing. So I started Alexandra's Africa, and in parallel, I started working as an independent consultant. I thought I have some really good skills, solution architecture skills. I knew, CC&B very well. And yes, I worked as an independent consultant and managed to earn enough equity until I thought, right, I have to cut the strings now. I have to focus if I want to make a go of this. And Alexandra's Africa was is a safari tour operating company, and has been going now. This is the 11th year that we've been operating. And yeah, and we're making, we make a little bit of a difference. And it's more of I sometimes say to people, I don't do tourism. It's always funny. I say, it's not tourism that I'm doing. It's people who are keen to learn about the country. It's educational. So it takes me back to my mentoring. You're helping people to understand the beautiful side of the country as well as some of the challenges, and just opens people's eyes really to what's happening. And there's a community I support at the heart of it, called the Rebola Art Route in the Popo province. And yes, I've got to know the guys very well, the artists. So we try and get a little bit of money to them on a regular occasion, which helps.
No, I take my hat off to you. I must admit, I've seen the brochures. I've had some good chats with you over the particularly the past 6 years since I left Oracle. I've always been very impressed with that side of it. And it does seem, maybe one day soon, my wife and myself will come out and take you up on one of those tours, because it does. I mean, I've only ever been there the once. As I said, went out for a wedding, had a phenomenal time. But again, exactly the same story as you're saying. Actually, is that Jeremy said, come with us. There was 10 or 12 people who went out there, and then we all went after the wedding, and we basically toured around Africa with them in a minibus taking flights. And it's the type of thing which I felt safe as a group, particularly with a couple of South Africans there who knew and were attuned to the country, shall we say. I think if I'd been doing it as Chris Wetherall, maybe on my own with my kids or something like that, I would have been absolutely petrified. Just wouldn't have wanted to do that. No, I'm in a beautiful place, I've got to say, and I can understand. Everyone. I think everyone says exactly the same thing. Stunning country, and it is. I definitely fell in love with it. Like everything, I mean, we can't exactly say the UK doesn't have its problems, whether they be political, and with everything that's happening in the world today. There's no such place that's a safe place, I don't think. But it's also, there's a big world out there to go and do. And I'm just glad that from my point of view, knowing you, that you're doing something where you're giving back. I mean, it's typical Alexandra, because I think that's what I would say about you. You've always given back. As an organization, we benefited massively from you coming on board, because actually what you gave back to us was huge. And it's just nice to see that since then you've given, you're doing this and then doing it this way as well. So yeah, it's lovely to see.
Thank you for those kind words, and I enjoy it as much. I get as much out of it myself as hopefully I give to people who I come into contact with or am able to help. But you reminded me, there was one other thing we started actually, and again it was in Dublin, on that Dublin project, and that was, I don't know if you've heard of a group called Toastmasters.
Yep.
Well, I did Toastmastering for many years, and I mentored young Toastmasters. And what we started actually on the Board Gosh project was in the evenings, once a week in the evenings, we had a little Toastmastering, or once a month. I can't remember how often we did it, but we got all the guys and said, would you like to learn to do public speaking? And we had evening sessions after work. So at sort of, 6 o'clock or whenever people could get away, we'd then have an hour of a Toastmastering meeting, nothing official, nothing affiliated with the big Toastmaster, but we just did a sort of impromptu Toastmastering, the impromptu speaking and the prepared speaking. And the guys who came, we probably had about 10 people on and off, and it was nice. Yeah, it was great.
What a phenomenal. Do you know what? I've got a vague recollection, but not. I didn't quite know it in quite as much detail. It must have been something that I heard in passing, but we never actually finished up on. So that's that's pretty. I think that type of stuff is great, though, isn't it? Because we're all scared of doing that one. Strangely enough, the idea of me doing a podcast and sitting down and talking to people petrified me. And people go, "But Chris, this is made for you." And I'm like, doesn't mean I'm not scared of it, and this is it's interesting, isn't it? Conquering your own fears and things. But I mean, it's funny actually, because I've kind of got out of the practice of picking up the phone and talking to people, and actually everyone pretty much welcomes it. They hope I'd shut up, actually, I think so. But it's one of those things, isn't it? If you can get into that type of environment, actually, like most things in life, it's never quite as scary as you actually think it's going to be. And if you can do that,
just take the step. Just take one step. It's great lesson I learned from my marathon running. Actually, sometimes during a marathon, you have very low emotional ebbs. And you always have to say to yourself when you're marathon running, just take the next step. Don't worry about how far you've still got to go. Don't think about that. Just take the next step and the next step. And soon you've come back up emotionally. You're bouncing along again. But it's just take the next step.
And it's that mental fortitude, isn't it? Which I think is something, we all struggle with that side, and it is incredible. I know when I stopped smoking, Brian Smith gave me very, very wise words. He said to me, just don't have the next cigarette. Don't give up. Yeah. Just don't have the next cigarette. So if you ask Brian Smith, he'll say, I'm still a smoker. When did you last have one? 25 years ago. And it's that type of thing. All you got to do is the next step. So there we are.
Well, that's right.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, as it always is, talking to yourself. I've really enjoyed that. I love the practical load shedding that we're able to see, and the reality of maybe the utilities. And look, it's been really interesting talking with you and hearing about some of that stuff. And I look forward to seeing you, and wish you very, very well. And I'll look forward to the next time we do, and maybe have a glass of wine together and talk about some of those good old days.
Absolutely, when I'm back in London.
I'll look forward to it.
And you look after yourself, and thank you for staying in touch with us and the wider network. It's super. You're a star.
My pleasure. Thanks, Alexandra. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Chris.
Bye-bye.
Bye.